So this video is going to be about tying my balanced fat minnow. It is a take on Fly Fish Foods baby fat minnow, but tied balanced. So I'm using Umpqua jig hooks. They're the XT500 series jig 60 hooks in size 10. 1/8 ounce tungsten beads and sequin pins to start. For thread, UTC 70 in white is perfect for this fly. All right. And the first thing you want to do is kind of measure out your sequin pin and see how much you need to cut off. So what I like to do is I like to kind of hold it up to the hook here, and we're going to kind of cut enough off of it to where we can make a strong connection to the top of the hook, but not so much that it's kind of interfering with the rest of the hook. So I would say right about that much, right about, probably half the length of the shank of the hook altogether. Take my diagonal cutters, kind of keeping that spot there. I'll hold it there. And I have a handy little trick with this because I have little kids at home and animals. I don't like to lose the sharp ends, so I kind of grab them with my fingers here, being careful not to pinch myself when I cut this. Get it a good cut. Then I have my sharp end I can dispose of safely and not have to worry about my 4-year-old finding it and stepping on it. We have the pin end, and we also have kind of a sharper end on back there. So the first thing you'll want to do that'll save you a headache later is you want to take the sharp end and take a file to it until it's smooth. You could even put this in the vise to do that if you wanted. Doesn't really take much to get this smooth, so I'm not going to bother with the vise. But the reason I'm doing this is so I don't cut my thread later when I'm tying the fly. It'll save me potentially quite a bit of headache later. All right. Maybe a little more on this side. See how that's feeling. Yeah, I'd say that feels pretty good. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our sequin pin and we're going to take our tungsten bead. We're going to slide the bead over the sequin pin, just like that. The wide open part of the bead sits over the head, and the smaller part of the bead is back over the pin. That's so we have something to tie down onto. And we're just going to put it in the vise here. And tie it on. All right, let's start by doing that. So I'm trying to make a thread bump enough that this bead won't go sliding down. Later I'm going to have some more material and stuff over this to hopefully secure it on tighter. But we are simply trying to build a slight thread base over this needle for now. And building a thread bump right in front here to prevent this bead from sliding down. That feels like it should be good. Like I said, I don't want to overdo this step because I'm going to be tightening it down later. So I'll get that going. And you could either whip finish it, or you could just do a quick half hitch because, like I said, this is just temporary. So I'm just going to half hitch it. All right, that's good enough for now. Now we're going to do the hook. Like I said, this is the XT500 size 10 jig hook. And start with our thread near the bend of the hook, near the eye bend of the jig hook, I guess I'll call it. Get that thread going. And now we're going to take this pin that we made and we're going to secure it to the top of the hook here. This is kind of a tricky part for determining where the fly is going to be balanced. I have learned with these through trial and error that with these size 10 hooks, it's about right here, which I would guesstimate as a bead length in front of the eye here. So we'll secure that on there. Some nice tight wraps going up and down. So I want to make this nice and strong. If you wanted to, you could make it even stronger by coating this with some glue or some resin. But for my purposes, I find thread to be just fine if you do it right. Now this is the point where if I wouldn't have filed, I would have cut my thread, wrapping over the back part of this hook or this sequin pin. It would have been really sharp. But because I thought ahead and filed there, I did not cut my thread, and I'm not throwing my vise out any windows today. All right, so this bead feels nice and secure. And now I'm going to show you on another one that I started, kind of what you want to do to check balance. I would suggest checking balance with maybe the first one of these you do. And then you'll kind of get a feel for where the balance point needs to be on future ones. All right, so this is how you would check balance. So I tied this one off earlier that I made with a whip finish. And I suggest doing this on your first one to kind of get an idea of what you want the bead. You're going to take it off the hook. Then you're just going to take some line. This is just some tippet I had lying around. Feed it through the eye of the hook. And then just see how it hangs. It's okay. Actually, it's slightly ideal. You see how it's slightly tipped down. We're going to add some material to the back of it that'll level it out a bit. And these flies don't have to be perfectly balanced to catch fish. You can always adjust the point that the fly is balanced if you're tying a clinch knot simply by how you position your knot. But anyways, I would definitely recommend doing this for the first one you tie. All right, next I'm going to take some marabou. And for this fly, you want to go thinner with the marabou. I'm actually going to use some of these feathers on the sides, not the tips like I would for a woolly booger, but I'm going to use some of these side feathers. I'm going to peel off that might even be enough. Just a little bit there. Yeah, that might actually be too much. Thinner is better. That looks good. That looks good. All right, so we're gonna take this marabou. Just getting it slightly wet. Make it easier to work with. And I am going to tie it on. I'm going to take that marabou, measure it to be a little more than a hook lengths, maybe like a hook and a half. And I'm going to pinch it off and back there. And now for some fun stuff. I'm going to take this Ice Dub in Callibaetis. This is a nice UV material. Kind of represents the blood vessels on the inside of the bait fish. And we're just going to make a thin dubbing rope out of this stuff. All right. I'm going to take this. I'm going to wrap it all the way up the body. So I get about there. And there's a nice little bump that forms over the top of the sequin pin. This is actually something we want, believe it or not. Now we're going to take a clump of this, just right from the top here. We'll come up with something like this here, just a loose clump. And we're going to set it on top of the fly loosely, kind of fold it in half, and do one loose wrap to catch it over, cinch it down, fold the remaining fibers back, and cinch it down. And then kind of pick or brush out any of the loose fibers in there. We want it to be wispy, and this is something that Fly Fish Food does in their baby fat minnow, and I think it's real creative. It's kind of imitating blood vessels on bait fish, because when bait fish are real little, they're almost see-through. You can kind of see their blood vessels, and that's what this this Callibaetis Ice Dub is for. Okay, I'd say that's pretty good. This is all going to be covered up in just a minute. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of this Fly Fish Food Bruiser blend cream. The dubbing comes out of the package kind of looking like this. And we're gonna work it in our fingers until we have something kind of like this, right? So what we're doing is we're just taking this clump, and this is way too much. You would really only want about this much to work with. You're just working it around, kind of pulling the short stuff out, keeping the long stuff in, and just working it with your fingers, kind of twisting it as you go until you get kind of your desired effect, which is all the fibers aligned in the same direction. Short fibers being out of there. This is about how much you'd want. So then I take my scissors here, cut off one of the wispy ends so I have a nice kind of clean end to start from. And then I actually measure with calipers. For this fly, size 10, I'm going to measure 1 3/4 inches, right? So I'm going to take my good end, put it in the caliper. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm just trying to get an idea of how much I need to cut off. And because this is two-tone, the caliper will allow me to evenly match it. So I'm just going to cut it right here. Set this down to do that real quick. All right, now I got my 1 3/4 inch clump of Bruiser blend. And I'm going to put it right about halfway is where I'm going to tie it in. And I'm doing it about halfway because I'm going to fold it in half, as you will see. So I'm going to kind of pinch it securely to get it on there. And then kind of adjust the positioning of the dubbing by pulling it through the loop. All right, that's about halfway. I give it one more wrap there just to tighten it down. Position it. All right. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but I'm going to do it in a different color. And because this is how the fly is going to ride in bottom, this is the bottom color. This is going to be the top color. So now I got my 1 3/4 inch of Cali 420 Bruiser blend all prepped and ready to go on the hook as well. I'm going to do the same thing with this. Bring this back up to the top. Mark it about halfway. Should be the same length as the white since I measured, or close to the same length anyways, since I measured, but not all that precisely. Get it cinched down there. Loose wraps followed by some tight wraps. Just a few. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take these fibers and work them around the hook. And then we're going to pull these back and do the same, these front fibers back, work them around the hook. We're going to do the same with these. I'm going to move this thread out of the way. Up, work it down, underneath. All right, so we're going to get the white. all these are kind of going to go onto the side here like this. We're really trying to cover up as much of the sides as possible. This is definitely a step worth taking time on. Will look better if we do in the end. All right, kind of separating each side as we go. Rotate it around, see how it looks on this side. All right. I would say this is the trickiest part of the fly to get right. That's probably pretty good. All right, let's see how it looks on this side. Oh yeah, it's looking pretty good. All right, good. That's looking good. So now we're going to take this thread, we're going to wrap it all the way back down into, right into in front of the bend of the hook, with all these just going in the direction we want it to now. All right. I'm going to tie a whip finish. And cut my thread off. So, all right, now that I got the base part of the fly started here, I'm just going to take some orange Sharpie. Red works even better. I think my kids used up my red Sharpie though, so we'll see how this orange does. We're going to make some little, just some little gill marks underneath. Actually, orange looks pretty good, I would say. Just to give it the appearance of some gills, just like that. All right, now we're going to do the eyes. I'm actually going to use the sharp end of one of these sequin pins. It's kind of like a bodkin, because then I can throw this away after I'm done with it anyway. Just to put a little super glue on the side here. This way I don't have to mess up my bodkin with super glue. All right, so we got a little super glue on the side there. I'm going to take this, one of these 1/8 eyes. I'm going to put it on, kind of slide it on. I'll take my bodkin here and my finger and kind of work it to where it needs to go. All right, press it in place. Give that glue a chance to sit, hopefully without gluing my fingers. I've done that a few times. Not quite where I want it. I want it right there. Yeah, right there. So let that sit for a second. All right, that should stay long enough for me to work on the other side. Rotate it around and do the same thing. All right, now I'm going to take this Solarez thick UV resin. The thick's a little tricky to work with, but you need quite a bit of resin to make a head, so I'm using the thick. All right, let that thick resin settle down in there. I'll take a torch to it. One thing that does help me is if I take some thin resin after I'm done with the thick resin, just get a little bit of that going on over it, just to give it a slightly better head. All right, and now we'll take the fly out of the vise. This is kind of what it looks like now. I'm just gonna look it over real quick, see if there's any trimming I need to do. Pull out some of these loose fibers. Yeah, I see a spot I want to trim right up here. Just a little bit. Careful not to cut the marabou, just kind of make it a little rounder on top there. Trim that. Trim some of that excess. And then do the same on this side. Just getting the kind of long stragglers out. All right. All right, so this is the finished fly. But what's great about these flies is not how they look dry. You got to see how they look wet. This is what the fly looks like wet. All that big bushy material condenses down quite a bit and makes a neat little slim profile, like a little baby minnow. Like I said, this has worked real well for crappie this spring. Water temperatures in my area are in the mid 40s at the moment, but I started catching the crappie right when they were around 42 degrees. And I'm just using this under an indicator. I suspect a little later in the year, it'll work just fine stripping this in. But yeah, that's it. Let me know if you want to see more tying videos or your thoughts about this one, or any tips you have, especially if you have any tips on how to do a good resin head. Let me know that, because that's something I always struggle with. Anyways, hope you have a great one. Catch you next time.